Welcome to Discerning News, where we bring you current stories from a bigger picture perspective. The purpose is to inspire clarity and enthusiasm for your unique journey. Welcome back, and we're excited again to have another week of some fun and inspirational sharings. And I think you're going to find some of these stories pretty unique. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready, Teresa.
Ready, ready, ready.
Ready, set, spirit ready? Forget the ready. All right, Tom, why don't you head off with our first story of the week?
Well, the first story that I wanted to bring up is kind of amalgamation of a number of stories, but I'll focus on the border. And there was a recent YouTube video that News Nation had put out, and they're talking to this guy in Texas, one of the officials that works with the border over there. And he was saying, like, the change was like immediate, like overnight. There isn't all these high number of migrants coming in. And, the 4 years of inflow with many millions, are several million at least, probably more, have flowed into the country. And so, the floodgates were stopped with, a few executive orders, and also with sending some troops. Actually, just saw late today, the day that we're podcasting, creating this podcast, that the U.S. Marines have been sent down there, so as well. So it's all happening. And the thing that strikes me most about it is that, to cut to the chase, really, that when someone has direction and a plan, how quickly they can move into implementing the plan. And what a dramatic, change. So we're hearing about how impossible it was, and, we can't do this, we can't do that. And even if we want to, depending on your feelings about the border and that migration that was happening, this is so true in so many things, where you can get so intellectual about, or over concerned, caught up in sentiment, whatever you want to say. And but once you come up with a plan, communicate the plan, and then put it into action, it's amazing how quickly things get cleaned up and dispelled. And so one of the thoughts that I had about it all, before I turn it over to who's next, Tiger, on this one? Yeah, okay. Is, that the thought that I had was just came and left.
Great, because you only give them the facts, right, Tom?
Yeah, I guess I'm giving the facts. Anyways, there was one. Oh, also, I guess the other story was how ICE has gone out and, overnight they found, they've arrested 500 people, and we're talking about the real baddies, the people that had the criminal records and so forth. And in fact, it seems like it's done almost so easily. Whether you agree with the border policy or not, it really goes to show you, it makes me ask, what were these people doing? Obviously nothing, because nobody wants the really baddies in the country, or somebody wants some handle on that. And yet they weren't being, picked up. So anyways, I'll turn it over to you, Tiger.
Thanks, Tom. This is an interesting story. It's one of those ones that, different people don't want to touch for political reasons and so forth. And for me, this is a good one, because as I do this work, and as a spiritual leader and just as person, I don't like fences. I don't like fences, right? This is a like and dislike, right? But I don't like fences. I don't like that idea. I want to be able to be free, don't fence me in, kind of thing. So, this kind of, where we're talking about now putting the border, wall and all this, this is a little bit different than what my preference is, because I don't want to be fenced in. I want greater opportunity. The American system was built on having lots of people come in. So there's that. So the piece, however, is not everyone is at the same state of consciousness. And I think that's the hard lesson I know for myself, particularly in my younger years, that in being around spiritual people and doing spiritual work, there was this idea that, we would just kind of all come together and we could all do our thing. And that's just not the facts. There's just people are making the grade as they progress through life. And so not everyone is the same place. And because of that, there has to be boundaries. And that is what going to be my key word that I'll begin with and end with is boundaries. So, I have, I want to welcome people into my home, but I've got a fence. I have a fence. And that's because not everyone's going to respect my home and my property like I do. And so that with that in mind, I can see why there has to be this push, because if the system gets set up in such a way that there's too many people crossing the fence, then there's going to be a reaction to that, because I just can't have people start to infringe on my boundaries without starting to set them. So that's what it's going to come down for me. What I'm discerning about this and what this means for me is that in the end of the day, I need to have my boundaries. I need to know where I begin and end. And I need to be aware of that people are still making the grade, right? It doesn't mean they're necessarily bad people, but they're making the grade and they don't think like I do. And so I just need to be aware of that as someone who wants, my thrust is rallying the forces. So you can imagine I'm an inclusive guy. This is what I want. I want everybody together, right? Rallying the forces. So I want us together, but it takes desire. It takes a need for people to be at a certain place to be able to handle their own. They have to have that self-respect. And it's going to get into a little bit of politics, but they have that left thing and the right thing, regardless of what country you're in. To me, the whole thing comes down to live and let live, right? Am I live and let live? And then human dignity, right? Personal dignity. And so that's the opportunity I want to provide. But because there are people who are willing to take, and they're willing to hurt others to get what they want, and rather than have that mutual self-respect, being of service, I have to set my boundaries. So for me, this story just brings home to me that I can be very relaxed. I can invite people, but I also have to have crystal clear boundaries, because as a sensitive, if I don't have those boundaries, I'm going to pick up everybody else's stuff, right? I'll start even thinking certain thoughts and they're not even belong to me. People who are really sensitive in the spiritual work business, they'll actually have ailments, the pain that doesn't even belong to them, right? They'll, like, oh, I got this headache. Why do I have a headache? And, oh my gosh, that person left and now I don't have a headache. And most people will probably relate to something like this, where maybe you have someone in your life or in your past goings on, is that you were under pressure when someone was around, and then when they left, you felt relaxed. So that's just an example of how I need to know clearly where I begin and end and have my boundaries. And so that's what stands out to me. Everything else of the politics and all that, probably everybody already heard all that. But the boundaries are the key. If I'm going to live a spiritual life and fulfill what I've come to do, enjoy myself, be abundant, I need to know where I begin and end. And so that's it for me.
Okay, so for myself, I found this story really interesting in the sense that it was immediate. As soon as that executive order came down, immediately the borders were closed. Immediately, I mean, you saw people crying, you saw people on the other side wanting to come in. but it happened immediate. And so I've been watching this, and not only watching, but I've really been feeling into this story for, honestly, since Biden came in the last 4 years. It's been, really amping up year after year, and more millions of people are flooding into not only our country, but also other countries. So this is very worldwide. It's happening in England. It happened in Greece and Turkey, all kinds of places. People are just flooding. So that ability to move around, to me, it's like we've all been feeling this change that's occurring. It has been occurring for, decades now, but it's amping up more. It's more prevalent. It's more, really, we can, especially as a sensitive, we can feel it more. So in the last 4 years, I've been very aware of the feeling of the people coming into especially our country, because I live here, and how I have really felt the desolation, the, what am I doing next? The lack of direction. That's one key that I've really noticed. So people, they don't do so well, honestly, no matter what you feel out there, you don't do so well without direction. If you are just given a willy-nilly kind of just come in and, hey, we'll put you here, we'll put you there, we'll give you some money, I don't know what's happening next. That's how I've been feeling the last couple of years when I've tuned into this. And like, Tiger mentioned how we all pick up on things. Well, I'm extremely sensitive. So the last 4 years has been definitely times when it's been highlighted, especially in the media, or, just a flux is coming in, that I felt it. And so having someone in a position, whether, to be, obviously now it's the new administration, but whoever takes that direction and gives people, okay, so you're coming into a situation. Now here's where we're going to put you. Here's what needs to happen. And that makes everyone, for myself, feel more secure. So I feel that's a lot of what's been happening. There's an insecurity feeling that's flowing in with this mass amount of people around the world. So that's my take on it. And I know that I feel more, honestly, I feel more secure with the border being secure now, because of the fact that I can sense that, okay, even if there's still problems and there's still, people in and out of the country, there's some type of security and a direction that's been put in place. And now how do we work with those that are here? How do we work with those that want to come in? And that's obviously for, obviously not my responsibility, but for other people to determine. So that's what I want to say really, is that having clear direction from, sometimes it has to be an outside force, or, for, like we're saying, for us being very sensitive and very spiritual people, we have our own direction. So that helps me also stay secure with all the insecurities that are going on around the world. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, well, for me, I heard an interview with Mayor Eric Adams from New York City, and he said something that I said way early in the piece. As I was tuning into, what did I feel about this situation? What is any insight from my guidance? And, I thought about it from a moral perspective, like, there's nothing wrong with letting people in the country. I'm not really against that. But what struck me was we had no plan for those folks, and they don't really have a plan. In fact, the only plan was we're going to give them money and take care of them and ship them off to other cities and so forth. And apparently, Mayor Adams had gone to the previous administration, the Biden administration, and about 10 times and said, listen, we can't support this in New York City. And he himself said in the interview, because there was no plan for the folks. So what happens then? He's a former law enforcement guy, and he says that they have time on their hands and idle minds and, those old religious sayings. Well, there's a lot of truth in that. And, I think in a way, like if I have true concern for somebody, if I'm going to try to be of service or help them out, I need to have a plan. I need to be organized with the feeling of being of service, or that feeling of that loving feeling, or, because we as spiritual people, we relate to that part, but it's only half the equation. So I have my feeling about helping people, where we can and where it's appropriate. And then I organize myself, to be of service when I'm really needed or not needed. So anyway, what struck me was, in summary for me, is it comes back to what I hear you saying, Teresa, is that, when you're clear with your direction, that's better than no direction. It's whether it's maybe perfect or not, that's a better deal. And everybody wins, in the longer term. And of course, once I really feel that I'm a soul, and all those people that came in are all souls on journeys and having learning experiences, I can relax with whatever they attracted and whatever they, set up for themselves. And I think those are my final thoughts on it.
What's coming up next, Tom?
Well, what we got coming up next is another story. We're going to take a little break. And after that, we're going to talk about how someone got scammed by Brad Pitt. Or was it Brad Pitt? Find out after this short message.
When you arrived back, you were enthusiastic to be here. If you've lost some of that enthusiasm, there's a way to reawaken it. It's by embracing a bigger spiritual picture of your life as a soul and igniting the feeling of freedom within. If you're ready and needing some more enthusiastic mojo for yourself, then follow the link in the show notes to access a free video series created by the Wayshowers College and get ready to start feeling more clarity, hope, and freedom within.
Welcome back. All right. The news story we're going to get into now is there was a lady in France. She got tricked from an AI generated Brad Pitt. And she ended up getting scammed out of over $800,000. And the scam was, if for those who know about this stuff, it was pretty classic. It was a classic scam. They used the AI to generate Brad Pitt's pictures into a hospital situation, and basically got this lady who was in the middle of a divorce to believe that Brad Pitt had reached out to her and needed money for an operation because all his money was tied up in some divorce that he was in. And so she slowly started giving money, and then ultimately it worked out to about over 800,000. So that's the overall story. It's a smaller story, but I thought it was important for us to regroup about as a whole because these things are going around. And Teresa, you have any insights or any discernment on that interesting story?
Boy, do I, Tiger. So it's interesting because lately I've been noticing more and more AI generated things.
Yeah.
Like the other day I saw one, it was like as if, not American Idol, what's the other one? America's Talent, has a talent, whatever. And it was someone coming up that was like a really old man who then turned into an angel. And then it even had people like what's his name? I'm trying to think of what his name is. Well, does Heidi Klum do that one? There's a couple people that do it, but anyway, they were some people who were watching this. They were the judges. That's what I was trying to say. And so when I'm looking at them, like they look all AI, and sure enough, the whole thing was created as an AI, like a commercial. And I was like, wow. And what came to my mind first thing was how the world is going to change so much from AI that it's going to be hard to differentiate what's real and what's not real. And that's what comes to my mind with this lady. And even for myself, like, I've had emails and different things come at me, and there's been some times when I'm like, is that real? Is that not real? And of course, now I recognize a lot of people scamming out there. And when I read through this story, it was interesting that this lady had been involved in this for a year and a half. And her 22-year-old daughter recognized at some point that there is something really not good going on here. So the thing that comes to my mind in that, and, I've been in situations too before where I've done some weird things and look back and go, my God, if I would have recognized that sooner. But honestly, it's a lot for myself about allowing people to have their learnings and their experiences. Because where this lady was at, and I'm just, obviously putting this situation into like thinking I'm her or not, but for as long as it went on, she really believed it. She truly believed that he had connected the first of all, his mom connected, saying, you
Right.
know, my son really has, you would be great for my son. And then it went on from there. And then Brad Pitt and etc. But being able to differentiate for yourself as a soul, what is real and what's not real. And as we get more and more into the AI, this is just going to become more and more prevalent. I see down the road we'll probably have movies where most of it's AI, you know, unlike say Avatar, you know, series, there'll probably be more and more realistic looking situations like that where we're like, is this even real or not? So for myself, back to that learning experience and allowing others to go through it, there is nothing that young daughter could have said to the mom
Right.
to persuade her otherwise. And that is really something that I've had to do for myself when I've seen other people around me and instead of having situations, being involved with other people that maybe are not the best for them that I can see, I have to allow them because there's nothing I can say that will persuade them to do anything different than what they're doing. Because it's like that momentum is going ahead, and same as the story, the momentum was there. Brad Pitt, I mean, hell, who wouldn't want Brad Pitt to come, you know, and the pictures of Brad Pitt in the hospital, he wants to send money. But so really recognizing what's real and what's not real and allowing people to have their learning experiences and sitting back and going, okay, again, what, you know, there's nothing I can do for the situation. Like the daughter said, except for just, you know, letting my mom get to the point where she recognizes it herself. That's my 2 cents. Well, 800,000 cents.
800,000.
Well, I like this story because it's a classic, you know, in the sense that in my past I've been fooled by people, and usually they're very artful in how they go about that. But one of the common denominators, I think, every time someone gets fooled like that is there's a part of them that wants to believe that that's true. And so they're kind of looking outside. I know for myself, I was looking outside myself for somebody to save me. Now, I didn't think of it that way. It was in a business situation, but that somehow I needed someone to mentor me instead of trusting myself. So that, I guess, is this is a great story because, you know, what happened with this with that person is kind of you know, that's on the far end of the spectrum of, you know, getting fooled, and apparently many people have, you know, made fun of her, you know, on the internet and so forth for getting fooled. But when we are in those situations and we have this strong desire to believe something, it's amazing how our common sense or that feeling, the gut feeling, you know, might just disappear. And so then the person who usually is, you know, could be someone that's very sensitive in the first place. And, you know, I've noticed a lot of spiritual people, you know, get fooled. And then they say, my God, you know, I have all this training and yet I still got taken in by this. And I think there's blind spots we have spiritually, and life is a bit, for me, like a journey of kind of uncovering those little blind spots where, oh my God, whenever I'm in this situation, I fall into, you know, the tape plays or the repetitive mode, I mean, or I get stimulated to just not go with my sensitivity. And a personal situation I had once when I got conned out of a sum of money, but it wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough for me at the time, was that really early on, my gut instincts, I knew something was off, but I just kept on, almost trying to prove to myself that it was true, you know, and my intellect would say, yeah, but this person, I've known him and he knows my friends, and how could that be? And, you know, and I know that when it happened to me, I started doing research, and it happens to a lot of business people. They get more than you'd realize, more successful people than myself from a business perspective have been conned, you might say. So, you know, I guess we have to ask ourselves, you know, why am I getting fooled? And usually because there's, you know, a fear there of not believing it or a predisposed idea. Like, I don't think it's as simple as they're dumb. There's such a strong emotional, and emotions are like how we've been taught to feel. There's some programming that, like I had for my situation, was looking outside myself for, my direction was a habit I had in certain situations. In other situations, I just didn't do that. It wasn't, I could spot, a bullshitter from a mile away. So those are some of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, this story is, I think, going to last the test of time, because many people have experienced some version of being conned or scammed or something. And kudos to this lady. She knew she'd get ridiculed for it, but she put it out there to warn people, about this. So, très bien on that one. But the couple points that stood out for me on this spiritually had to do with what you all brought up, and then also about where transition comes in my life. So when I'm moving from one place to another, I'm in transition, right? If I'm going from here to the grocery store, between here and the grocery store, I'm in transition, right? When I pass on and leave the body and go home to where my true home is, right? There's a point where I'm getting there. That's called transition, right? So passing on or dying is not a big deal. It's just the transition that most people get twisted about, right? But so when I'm, in this case, a lovely lady was in the middle of a divorce, and she's in transition, right? She's moving from this married status to this single status, and there's a transition where the divorce is happening, right? And it's a vulnerable state. So if I'm walking, right? If I stand, right, in the position of walking, right? In other words, I now have my feet together and I'm standing in this position as if I was walking, but I'm standing still, I'm the most vulnerable in my balance. Like, I can fall over real easily, right? That I'm using that as the metaphor, is that unless and this kind of goes back to the previous story, unless I'm clear with my boundaries and I'm clear with where I begin and end and what is my energy, what is my sensitivity, I'm going to become extraordinarily vulnerable in those moments. And that's when the take, as they say, is easy. I'm an easy mark, right? And so spiritually, I need to be sensitive that when I'm in transition for anything, when I'm moving from one place to another, when I'm learning something new, or I'm being hit and it's like, oh God, I'm having a bad day, and I'm shifting out of that. Like, I need to be aware, to be a little bit more on my game, right? Because this is transition. So that's one key thing to be aware of, because it can be a vulnerable place in transition. It's nothing to be afraid of. Transition's normal, happens every day. I go from here to work. I go from here to the grocery store. We do it all the time. Every night I go to sleep. I transition out to the big picture, right? There's no big deal here. So that's the thing to be aware of from my perspective. The other thing is just to be sensitive about the con. Con artists, people who are takers, whether it's, they're full-on thieves or they're willing to rob you, or whether they're very, like Tom's bringing up, they're very seductive and they know how to reel all that in. I mean, it takes someone with some, work and patience to pull some $800,000+ in, So this is hard work. Now, you wouldn't think about it on the side, they're just taking money, but it takes a lot of energy to do that, because you're having to work against the law of nature, which is to be of service, to exchange, right? And in addition to that, you're breaking the law, right? So there's all this extra work. Just imagine if someone were to apply themselves to just be of service to somebody, how much more successful they could be, and the people would back you. The law would back you. So it's a hard work for con artists and for thieves and these people who are doing this stuff. But I cannot. There's always going to be that, right? There's just levels of consciousness. And until they outgrow that, they're willing to take. So I don't want to be afraid and walk around, all crunched up inside. I want to be able to be a giver. I am a giver. So I want to be free about that. But I just need to like to your point, Tom, is that I need to follow my feelings, follow my first impressions, like something's off here, something doesn't feel right. And then just recheck that, check, recheck, and cross-check, and the greatest friendships I've ever had never came with money. They were always just people interchanging with each other. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't want to get money messed up in something in a relationship. So it's just being sensitive to that. The other thing that a final wrap up is two things. One is emotions and confusion. And we talk a lot about that. It's in the lecture that you can get. It's in the notes down below where you can be a part of that lecture. It's really good. It gives you the big picture on so much stuff. But one of them is about emotions and communication. And I need to remember that emotions are part of planet Earth, and they're my ability to communicate. They're how I emote, right? Emotions, emote. So emote is all about being on a play, and I'm expressing myself, And for those who are able to view this and not just hear me, I'm moving around and showing my hands, and I'm emoting to you. So there's emotion in it, right? So I'm conveying the feeling. But I need to remember that my emotions are not my true feelings. These are two different things. They can be similar, they can be connected, but they are two different things. And so this lady, if she's in that transition place, it's easy to get emotional. And then I latch on to stuff, or I get caught up in stuff, and it becomes a roller coaster. And that's what is being brought up. It's like it's so easy for me to get sucked into something because of the emotions of it, rather than the emotions just being an expression of me and what I want to share and be a part of. So that's one thing that I wanted to share about. Emotions are good as long as I remember where they fit. They're part of my expression system. They're never meant to be something to rule the day that I get ultimately this, depressed, or this anger, or this unbelievable stuff. That, I have to go back to the initial feeling. What is the first feeling that I got? It either feels good or it doesn't. It feels hot, it feels cold. These are my true feelings. And then I work from there, right? And one thing is for sure, the more I experience something and go through something, the less emotions there are, and the more facts and true feelings there is. And finally, just real quick, is just to be sensitive to something called confusion, right? Confusion is just when I don't have the facts, and I don't want to just live in that state or get caught up in it. And this is kind of what, Tom, you were bringing up. If I'm used to working without facts, if I'm used to living my life based on emotions rather than true feelings, then I'm going to be susceptible to people who prey on that, or to other things that can move in and create troubles. So confusion can be at different levels. There can be confusion because there's some kind of entity or something like that. But there can be just the reality of, I'm just confused. I'm not getting the facts. I don't know where I begin and end. I want something for nothing. I'm afraid, but I'm not willing to do something about it. I'm angry, or I'm trying to fulfill some vow that I'm supposed to do. And, all these things can put me in a state of confusion rather than just coming back home to remember where I begin and end and move forward from that. And my final thing about all this is the quickest way out of confusion, the quickest way out of emotions, the quickest way out of a con is to get my facts of who I am, where I came from, what I'm going to do, and get back on track as quickly as possible. All the other stuff is the past. It's over. Let me move forward. And that is the healing for me and the whole thing. All right. So moving on, the next story we're going to be moving on to is a interesting and lovely story about a sunfish in Japan. I think you're going to like it. It's an inspirational story.
When you synchronize time and trust to get your own answers, it makes playing the game of life a whole lot easier. Part of the game here is about unfolding your inner wisdom, those intuitive gifts that support you every day. Being able to tune into those messages when they show up through the 4 unique avenues is a game changer. These avenues are the ability to just know things, see with your inner vision, hear that small still voice within, and feel from those gut instincts. We all have these abilities. If you're interested in finding out more about how you can unfold them to support your unique journey, you're going to love our monthly masterclasses called Intuition Now. Check out the link below for the date and timing of the next set of classes. And get ready to be in the right timing to trust your inner wisdom. See you soon. Okay, we're back. And yes, so let's get to that final inspiring story. And I found this story in Japan, of all places. Actually, it was in southwestern Japan, and it was about a very large sunfish. And you guys can all look in the show notes, because we'll have the article there, and you can check everything out and see how big this fish was. But what happened was this sunfish was in an aquarium. It was the top thing that people came to see. It was a highly rated, attraction that everyone liked to come and see at the aquarium. And the aquarium closed down for renovations for 6 months. And what happened is, not soon after, whenever they closed down, this fish started showing some signs of some not feeling too well, banging its head against the wall. I guess it was actually the mirror, the glass, and looked unwell and was kind of withering away. And so one employee said, there's something going on with this, and I think it might be because no one visits. There's no one going on. It's a solitary fish, but this fish was oftentimes having a lot of visitors coming and seeing it through the glass. So what these employees did is they actually hung their clothes, and they actually made some cutouts of themselves and put them outside of the glass. And sure enough, this sunfish started turning around. So I found this very inspiring, and I would love to hear your perspective of this beautiful sunfish and what happened to it. Never thought you'd be hearing this story today, right? What the heck?
Okay, so here's,
sunfish.
You might call this the spiritual challenge here. This is so I'll just relax and get a key word from my guidance. And really, my first impression is all things have a consciousness, and it might be a different level than my consciousness. But it's what I find inspiring about it is there is this connection. There is a connection between that spirit of that sunfish and all the folks that came in. And you may say that, well, that's a bit of a psychological trick to put the cutouts there, but it puts that sunfish's consciousness, at a state of ease and out, they're no longer in distress. So it's a beautiful story. I mean, those of us who've worked with animals, I've had horses and dogs, and I used to keep fish. I used to love aquariums, and I've gone scuba diving, and I've been up close to some big and weird fish and so forth, and some small ones. And it's hard to believe that there's not some semblance of a consciousness there, but we don't talk about it too much. I think it's a level of consciousness. It's a a precursor to maybe that human experience. But I don't want to be dogmatic about it, because I know there's people in the spiritual world that, have other ideas about how it all works. So, I guess that love energy is love energy. And what this story reminds me of is, just dealing with all my spiritual brothers and sisters who might be in that animal stage, or that animal state of consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I've never delved into it too deeply myself. I don't really care that much. I just know that, there's something there. So whether I'm, going to eat a cow and slaughter a cow or a sheep or something, just do it with quickness and respect. And, when I'm working with animals and horses in particular, there's, you get a lot more with, understanding how they operate. And, there's no such thing as really beating a horse into submission. That's like doesn't, or dogs, like you can, those of you who have trained dogs know that there's you have to be firm, you have to be clear that you're the alpha dog, but everybody knows the stories where you can ruin a dog because you don't, work with it in an effective and fair manner. So I guess the bottom line is respect for all life.
Yeah, this is a good story. It is inspirational and fun. For me, the things that stand out are needs and discernment. And so everything has needs. Everything has needs. So obviously, if you haven't seen this story, the sunfish is like, it's really big. It's a big
one of those saltwater ocean.
Yeah, it's not like a little sunfish you would see in an aquarium. This is a big fish. And indeed, it just got used to all these people coming around, and in Japan, and just really, wow, look at this thing, taking pictures and the whole thing, and so it can picks that energy up, and when it's not there, it's going to withdraw. And I think the big thing was that it actually stopped eating. It stopped eating and started really having trouble. That was the real issue. But just coming back to me, the spiritual part of it to me is just remembering needs, that everything has needs. If it's here on planet Earth, if it's got life to it, it's got needs. And I need to be aware of that if I'm going to be working with things around me, right? In this case, I got a fish, but really it goes past that. It's really about the needs, making sure that the needs are clear and taken care of. And when the needs are taken care of, my needs are taken care of, there's so much more opportunity to do other things. It's just so much available. And so that's the first thing for that stands out to me on this story. And it's a lovely story. The other part of it is the discernment and discerning the needs of how these workers, guys that are just in their feelings, just working, right? These aren't big executive people with big degrees or something. These are just people who are just, salt of the earth people. They're just working. And they came up with this solution to say, hey, why don't we just put some little mannequins there, and they taped their uniform to the aquarium glass, so that they made it look like. But this is that energy of just like, well, what can we do? Let's just do that. And so they did it, and then they went back to work, And so to me, that whole discerning my needs, and if I'm going to be of service to people, right? Not a servant, service to people, then I need to be sensitive to their needs, right? And this is how I can connect with people and connect with what I need as well. So if I'm discerning the need, then I am in the middle of the river when it comes to whatever support and backing that person has and what I have. I'm working with the core energy. And they say that the needs are broken down into two things. One is your physical survival, and number two, your spiritual. Two things, right? Those are needs. If it's not those two things, then really it's a want. It's not a need. So if I remember that personally and spiritually, then I remember to have my inner checklist to work with needs first, and then I can move to the wants, right? And I love wants. I want, people want a Ferrari, or they want a lot of money, or they want a new partner. These are all great things, and have whatever you want. But I need to make sure that I'm coming from the pivot point of my needs first, right? I mean, there's no sense in wanting to save people if I can't even save myself. There's no point in wanting to feed people if I'm having trouble with my food, right? So when the needs are clear, how amazing it is to just be of service. In this case, you have the sunfish and thing, but really, to me, this extends out spiritually to so many more things, and the kindness and concern that can be there, and it hits just right because I'm tuned into the need, not the wants, right? Every time I myself have given too much to people or given too little to people is because I was involved with what they wanted or what I think they wanted. Every time I focused in on what they needed or what I sensed the need was, it was boom. It was like a good, an arrow going right into the middle of the target. It was, I didn't overstate it. I didn't understate it. I communicated. I helped. Sometimes this is just having a hand to help someone, and then I never see them again, right? So to me, it comes down to needs, making sure that my needs are clear before I jump into my wants, and then discerning needs. What's my needs here? What's the need there, right? And then I can build on top of that. So this can happen very quickly. It doesn't have to be this big drawn out thing, but it's just, for me, that's the two key words: the needs and discerning the needs.
Wow, I had no idea the little sunfish, not as big as sunfish, would inspire such good sharing. So for myself, it's interesting. The first thing that came up was isolation. And it took me back to the beginning of COVID when we were all in isolation and we were away from one another. And I felt for the fish that this is how we all as a collective have felt in the last few years. And the importance of coming together with people, coming together with community. And so, as we're on obviously YouTube here sharing worldwide around the world, there is a community feel in a sense of our energies are out there. So this big fish was in isolation. No one was coming. Where's the community? So again, back to even what Tom was saying at the beginning, how, everything has a conscious. And this fish definitely had some needs, like Tiger's saying. But what a lot of the needs were is, where are the people? Where's the energy? Where's my community? Even though obviously the fish can't, verbalize that, but there's some need there for community, for interactions, for seeing, it has eyes like we do. It could see that there are people out there. It could see that there are mannequins out there. And so that's where it really took me back to, was that the isolation, the feeling of everyone's gone, everyone's in their house. I can't communicate. I can't feel and see people like I freely could before. And then once they came back into the room, like now, now that we're going back out and sharing, in person, or we're back at workplaces. Well, that's a big deal, especially for our humanity, and for us to actually survive, is to have those interactions. So that's where this story took me, is back to the COVID, the isolation, and then embracing community and people again. So good on you, sunfish. I hope hope that they open that damn aquarium soon, because sunfish needs some more people.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So there we go, guys. Another ending of another episode of Discerning News. And we appreciate you listening in and watching this episode, and hope that wherever you get your news and other news you may be out there listening to in the world, discern it through the eyes of a spiritual perspective and see how different it may feel and sense for yourself. Right?
Rock and roll. That's right. That's the way.
All right. And until next week, we'll see y'all soon. To keep the enthusiasm going, please like, subscribe, or comment below. We would love to hear from you.